speaker for the session.
Yeah.
Dr. Naveen Bhat, sir, is an associate professor from Center for Indian Knowledge System, Chanakya University, Bengaluru. Dr. Naveen Bhat, sir, has been associated with a lot of work, and he has pursued his doctoral degree from Central Sanskrit University. He served as assistant professor in Amrita Darshana, that is International Center for Spiritual Studies, and Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, that's Coimbatore, for almost a decade. Sir has frequently contributed to popular Kannada dailies, magazines, and periodicals. He has published 5 books in Kannada and 1 in English, which is the most recent work being Katha Gata, a collection of insightful narratives of Indian history. His articles on literature, history, and statecrafts have appeared in various periodicals. As a translator, Sir has translated works between Kannada and English and vice versa. Notably, his Kannada adaptation of the work on semantics of Pananiyara grammar was funded and published by Government of Karnataka. It's an awe feeling to all of us to have you with us today, sir. On behalf of everybody, we welcome you for the session, and the session is over to you, sir.
Okay. Kiranti Mangala Sneereh Kadakshay Karunamritam Samaye Sanidhattam Me Sukti Dhenu Saraswati. Namaskaram to everyone. Effective communication. Actually, regarding this, I received the communication very recently. So there was not much time to go into deeper ends of the sources. However, I tried to do the justice to the topic which is chosen. Effective communication, insights from Indian epics. When we say Indian epics, we will try to look into mainly on Ramayana and Mahabharata. Here and there, we will try to bring in Kalidasa and others as well from the classical Sanskrit literature. Can I share my screen, ma'am?
Yes. Yes, sir, you can, sir.
Very quickly, we will go through what here for next 20-25 minutes, what we are going to discuss. This is just an overview here, significance of communication in management. Perhaps participants who are present here, scholars and research scholars, they are well aware how significant, how important it is to have effective communication in the world of management. So there is an Indian perspective to it that we will discuss. When it comes to India, we are largely, dependent upon oral traditions. Very recently, when I say recently, in terms of Indian history, when we take Indian history, it is more than around 2,500 years. When I say recent, in the last 200, 300, or 400 years, we moved from oral traditions to textual traditions or written content. Even today, what we call as texts also were once upon a time in oral traditions. So verbal and non-verbal communications we will discuss. And then there are some certain civilizational differences. Unfortunately, to tell the story of theirs, only out of 4, 2 civilizations are alive today. And out of that one civilization, that is China, we do not hear much about their past in the present context. So it is effectively only us Indians or Indus Valley civilization people who are able to narrate, who are capable of narrating their stories in first-person perspective. So there are certain civilizational differences with us and the communities or people living in the cradles of other civilizations. And then we will move to communication in the context of Indian epics, in particular to Ramayana and Mahabharata, and then little bit discussion about storytelling, which is a very living tradition in India. Multiple types of storytelling are even today alive, and we are experiencing it. And Indians are the people, one of the best peoples in the world who can create and listen to stories. And then insights from Ramayana and Mahabharata already mentioned. So this is going to be our large portion of discussion today. So to set up the context, let's start from any discussion in India that begins with Veda, because that is the source of our memory. Thousands of years of civilizational run, what we have back in our background, it is largely sourced from Vedas. So Veda opens up at multiple places in Vedas. We can find reference to speech or vak she is referred to as Devi. And as now we are going through Navaratri, last 3 days out of 9 are dedicated to Saraswati, goddess Saraswati herself, who is known to be the Devata of speech. So Devim Vachamajanayanta Devaha, often quoted Rik from Rigveda 8th Mandala, and then Vagvai Vishwa Bhutani Jajne. Entire world is created by Vak or speech. Or if we move towards some Subhashitas, there are n number of Subhashitas quoted. If you look into the compendiums of Subhashita like Subhashita Bhandagara, one can notice a great repository of Subhashitas dealing with speech or Vak or Vak. Here, Keyuranina Bhushayanti Purusham Harana Chandrojjala, one of the prominent and very popular Subhashitas, which ultimately in the 4th line says, Kshiyante Khalu Bhushanani, all other ornamentation, embellishments, they perish, they fade away. But then Vak Bhushanam Bhushanam, the only ornament one can wear all the time without letting it getting faded is Vak or speech. This is from Niti Shataka. And then one of the statements from Mahabhashya, perhaps in Mahabhashya also it is taken from some other source. I have taken this shloka to emphasize on one idea that is called Vag Yoga. Yastu prayunkte kushalo visheshe shabdan yathavat vyavahara kale sonantamapnoti jayam paratra Vag Yoga vid dushyati chapashabdaihi. This is taken from Patanjali's Mahabhashya, the commentary on Ashtadhyayi of Panini, which goes back to the 1st century BCE. That is the decided time of Patanjali Maharshi, where he uses this to set up the context for Paninian Ashtadhyayi, which deals again with this speech. Ashtadhyayi, oldest known Vyakarana, which is completely available today with its living tradition. Prior to that, those Vyakaranas lived and flourished, but still their traditions are today not alive. So the only prominent school of grammar today we have is that is of Panini. Panini did not give any context to his Vyakarana. But then Mahabhashyakara, Panini happened in perhaps 7th century BCE. There are discussions or debates among the scholars whether it is 4th century BCE or 7th century BCE. But depending upon or going through many scholarly works, one can say it is 7th century BCE decisively. Now, in Mahabhashya, that is of 1st century, Mahabhashyakara, Patanjali, sets up a context for the idea of speech and communication. And in that, where is the place of Panini in grammar? He brings that idea in. He says these sutras of Panini are made for clarification of speech and shabdas. Which shabdas? Both Vedika Shabda and Laukika Shabda. Then the debate opens up. Why one should know shabdas? And one of the Purvapaksha is presented by Mahabhashyakara is Yastu Prayunkte Kushalo Visheshe Shabdan Yathavat Vyavahara Kale. Person who doesn't know which is Shabda, which is Apashabda, which is correct Shabda, correct word, which is an incorrect word. Better he doesn't know, better one should not know what is correct word and what is wrong word. Whatever is in usage, if somebody uses that in day-to-day conversation and in other places, he can easily communicate the meaning. But then person who knows Shabda and Apashabda, the classification of Shabda and Apashabda, he becomes a sinner. I mean, he accumulates papa. Vagyogavit dushyati cha apashabdaihi, because he knows Apashabda. What is Apashabda? He uses Apashabda as well. Now my emphasis here in this shloka is Vag Yoga. Vak is called as a yoga by Patanjali Maharshi. Then if you come to Malavika Ganamitra of Kalidasa, he says, Shlishta Kriya Kasyachid Atma Samstha Sankranti Ranyasya Vishesha Yukta Yasyobhayam Sadhu Sa Shikshakanam Dhuri Pratishthapaitavyaha Eva. I mean, Yasya, to whom Shlishta Kriya, Atma Samstha Shlishta Kriya, by virtue of his birth or previous Janma's karma, one has got some skills. Sankranti Ranyasya Vishesha Yukta, that knowledge or bhava what he has is effectively communicated using his skills. And some people are enabled with Shlishta Kriya, some people are enabled with Sankranti. Sankranti means communication. Yes, Yobhayam, one who is enabled, one who is equipped with both this, sa shikshakanam dhuri pratishthapayitabhyah. He should be considered to be the topmost teacher, according to Kalidasa in Malavika Mitra. So the idea of communication has been emphasized, starting from right from Vedas throughout all other classical Sanskrit literature. If in other way, if you can see, Nadakya sarvabhuteshu jiva rupena samsthita anadi nidhana saiva sukshmavak anapayini. Sarvabhuteshu, in all living creatures, Nadakya jiva rupena samsthita. This Nada or Shabda is living in the form of jiva or life. Anadi nidhana, she is beginningless and endless. Similarly, in the similar lines, Bhatrahari of 4th or 5th century Common Era, in his Vakyapadiya, again, it is Vakya, that work is dealing with Vakya and Pada. Regarding communication, again, he begins his Vakyapadiya with this shloka, Anadi nidhanam brahma shabdattvam yadaksharam vivartate arthabhavena prakriya jagato yataha, he says. Anadi nidhanam brahma shabdatattvam. According to him, shabdatattva is the anadi nidhanam brahma, what is later emphasized by Adi Shankara based on the prasthanatraya as Shuddha Brahma or Paratpara Brahma. That was called by Bhatrahari as Shabdatattva or Shabda Brahma. So to this extent, our ancestors have considered Vakya or Shabda and communication to be so important. If you go to Natya Shastra is considered to be one of the world's first ever communication book. The furthering of Bharata's theory of Bharata's Natya Shastra, in further scholars, later scholars, they say, like in Sahitya Darpana of Vishwanatha, Angikam Bhuvanam Yasya Vachikam Sarvama Vangmayam, one of the famous shlokas, Aharyam Chandrataradi Tam Numas Satrikam Shivam. So the communication is not only verbal communication, it can be Angika as well. And then Aharya, the peripherals. So Bharata Muni theorizes communication uniquely. He speaks largely about Rasa. The foundation of Rasa Sutra is also found in Bharata's Natya Shastra. And Rasa, it contains the meaning which is clash of art of recitation, art of music, art, and art of acting. Now, all this, when you speak of art of acting, this is also nothing but one of the modes of effective communication. If we speak of the other civilizations like the Mesopotamians, they were reliant upon written content. As old as 4500 BCE, they wrote things on tablets. Even today, they are available in the forms of tablets. But back then, we do not find any texts evolved in India. The available texts are also, as I mentioned earlier, they came to us in the form of oral traditions. Now, our emphasis is largely on how to express orally the content, how to express the content in oral mode or in dhvani or shabda rupa. If we look into the significance further, Vedas are called Shrutis, or Vedas are also called as Shabda. Veda stands for Jnana. Shruti is again, it is coming from some oral connotation. Shruti means heard. Literally, if I have to translate the word Shruti, it is nothing but a content that is heard. Heard by the Shishya from the mouth of Guru. And thus it is transmitted from generations to generations. And then it is called Shabda. Shabda is, again, as it is discussed by Patanjali in his Mahabhashya, it is of two types, Varnatmaka and Dhanyatmaka. So the focus of Indian civilization in comparison with the Mesopotamian was on Dhvanyatmaka Shabda. And if you look into the 6 auxiliary limbs of Veda, Shiksha, Vyakaranam, Chandaha, Niruktam, Jyotisham, Kalpaha. These are the 6 auxiliary limbs or Shadangani of Veda. To elaborate Veda or to make sense out of Veda, these auxiliary limbs have been developed. Now this Shiksha is completely about phonetics, how to pronounce the terms in proper manner. Even today that gives the guidance. For example, in common words context, we often come across confusions regarding pronunciation of Brahma, Madhyana, Brahmana, and all that. Because in Devanagari, it is written Makara first and then Hakara. This is an exception. In Devanagari, when we write, even to the extent of Kannada also, when we write Sanskrit language, when it is written in Devanagari, the way we pronounce it, the same sequence, we write them in most of the cases. But with the Brahma and Madhyana and all that, Hakara comes first and later comes Makara. Now the question comes, why should it be pronounced as Hakara and Makara later, like Brahmana, Madhyana or Madhyana? These kind of questions often occur. And there are people even today who pronounce Brahmana as Brahmana, Brahma as Brahma. How to finalize this thing? And Shiksha, there are multiple Shikshas. One of the prominent Shikshas is of Panini, which is attributed to Panini. And then prior to Shiksha, there were Pratishakyas. And in Pratishakya, one can find an answer for this. Our ancestors were so keen in uttering or communicating idea precisely. According to, regarding this Brahmana or Madhyana, Brahmana or Brahma, it says, Pratishakya says, Hakara Nanama Urdhvam Prasaranti. When you say Hakara, the Nakara and Makara which are coming along with Hakara, Makara and Nakara which are coming along with Hakara, they come first. So it is not Brahmana, it is Brahmana. It is not Brahma, but it is Brahma. Makara should be pronounced first. Nakara should be pronounced first. So this way, the first auxiliary limb of Veda, that is Shiksha, deals with the phonetics. Even today, showing the light regarding the pronunciation. And second, Vyakarana. We discussed a lot about Vyakarana in the first slides, the previous slides, that there are 9 Vyakarana, sometimes Ashta Vyakarana. They all dealt with the accuracy of the world of words. Now, the second limb of Veda also is dealing with Shabda or Dhvani or communication. Shiksha, Vyakaranam, Chandas. To some extent, Chandas is also doing the same thing. That means out of 6, fully half, that is 50% of Vedic limbs are dealing with Shabda or communication. Because the phonetic precision is one of the major areas that our ancestors revered much. Then from Mahabhashya, one of the anecdotes from Mahabhashya, ya udatte kartavye anudattan karoti khandikopadhyayas tasmi chapetan dadati. This is taken from Mahabhashya. Udatta anudatta swarita, this Traiswarya, or the combination of 3 swaras in reciting Vedas, is so important. It is so important that somebody makes mistake while chanting it, a Shishya makes mistake, then Khandikopadhyaya, one of the Upadhyaya perhaps lived at the time of Patanjali, he says, Khandikopadhyaya tasmai chapetan dadati. When a student makes that kind of swara mistake, Khandikopadhyaya comes and gives him a chapeta. Chapeta today perhaps we can consider as a slap. So chapetam dadati. And then in the same Mahabhashya, there is another anecdote. Multiple places it has been given, but Mahabhashyakara also brings in when emphasizing on the precision of swara or communication. That is Indra Shatrur Vardhasva. This Vratrasura, he wanted to conduct a great yajna in order to tame Indra or defeat Indra. And he conceptualized a yajna. In the yajna, this particular mantra was formulated. Indra Shatrur Vardhasva, let there be a son for me who can be the defeater of Indra. But while chanting this mantra, the Vedikas or the Yajnikas made little modification in the swara. They did not make any change in the words as such or the varnas as such, but little modification in the swara completely changed the meaning. Instead of getting the son who would be the defeater of Indra, this Asura got a son who was defeated by Indra later. So in order to give emphasis on the clarity of communication, Mahabhashyakara brings in the anecdote of this Indra Shatru Vardhasva. So largely, India is the land of speech. Based on all this contextual background, one can consider that India is largely the land of phonetic precision. As I mentioned, sister civilizations were not of that sort. Oral tradition and Shruti Parampara, even to Katha, the very idea of Katha is a dhatu. Today we use Katha Shabda in almost all Indian languages to say story, to tell, to give the meaning story. But then Katha in Sanskrita has the root Katha. Katha means Vakya Prabandha. I mean, compendium of different sentences is Katha. So Katha and Patha. When it comes to Shruti Parampara, Patha is the thing. Patha means Pathanam. Patha Vyaktayam Vachi. So expressed sound is Patha. And Patha and Katha, these two traditions are even today alive in India. And as I mentioned earlier, most of the Indic knowledge systems came to us even today alive and thriving, all because of this Katha and Patha Parampara. Further, we will look into Ramayana, where this Aharya and Angika Vachika are well expressed. Now, in the first canto of Ramayana, that is Balakanda, sons of Dasharatha are born, and Vishwamitra walks in to take Rama along with him. He expresses his mind with very mild words and very convincing words. Because on arrival of Vishwamitra, Dasharatha shows him some gestures of welcoming gestures. And pleased by his gestures, Vishwamitra speaks. Sadrasham Rajashardula Tavaitad Bhuvinanyatha Mahavamshaptasotasya Vasishtha Vyapadeshinha. He goes on, Yattume Hridgatam Vakyam Tasya Karyasya Nishchitam Kurushva Rajashardula Bhavasatya Pratishhravaha. There are certain vakyas or kathayitum kinchidasti. In my mind, there is something to tell. He uses the term vakya. And now I'm going to express it. And in order to convince Dasharatha, his communication of Vishwamitra is so effective that though Dasharatha got his sons very late half of his life, with great efforts, he conducted Putrakamishti Yaga as part of his Ashwamedha Yaga in order to get sons. Now, on those 4 sons, he has kept entire life into them and leaving them apart, especially Rama, sending him along with a sage who wants his son to fight Rakshasas in the forest. Dasharatha would not agree to this. But then Vishwamitra brings in certain ideas to convince Dasharatha very effectively. Aham Vedmi Mahatmanam Ramam. Being a father, Dasharatha perhaps would never thought that his son is a Mahatma. Of course, Valmiki never expresses that Rama is an avatara directly in his Mahakavya of Ramayana. But then he puts in these kind of words in the mouth of Vishwamitra for the first time, that I know the purpose of life of Rama. I know the speciality of Rama. See, he says, Mahatmanam Ramam, evancha Satya Parakramam, Vasishthopi Mahateja, Yeche me tapasisthitaha. Apart from me, Vasishtha also may be knowing the truth of Rama. So, while communicating his mind, his vakya that is present in his mind, Vishwamitra becomes a very effective communicator. Not only in this portion, further, he goes along with, of course, Dasharatha had to agree at the end, not mainly because of Vishwamitra's communication skills, but then Vishwamitra uses other skills as well in getting Dasharatha in his way. Then Rama Lakshmana go along with Vishwamitra. The trio of Rama, Lakshmana, Vishwamitra walk in the forest. Valmiki brings in such a beautiful context for multiple stories. This is the only portion Valmiki Ramayana wherein not directly connected stories are narrated. As we know, in Mahabharata is the compendium of n number of stories. plethora of story can be seen in Mahabharata, which are directly not connected to the cardinal story of Mahabharata. But then Ramayana is not like that. Largely a linear story Ramayana is. In Ramayana also, there are certain stories which are not directly connected, but narrated by the characters of Ramayana. That is during the first Vanavasa of Rama Lakshmana. It is not Vanavasa to say, but they were walking in the Vana or forest, and Vishwamitra again proves him to be a very, very effective communicator. It is not only other story that Vishwamitra narrates. He brings in his own story, his past life before becoming a sage, what he was. What about his family? He brings in his own story, and Rama Lakshmana prove that they are best listeners because they walk through the forest, and whenever they walk into a new region in the forest, Rama gets amazed and he also gets curious to know the history of that place. Vishwamitra, being the very convincing narrator, communicator, he tells the story of that region. And then that portion of Ramayana is all about stories which are not directly connected with Ramayana. But then comes Kishkindha Kanda. Here opens up the character of Hanuman. Hanuman, apart from being a character in the story of Valmiki Ramayana, he is, apart from Rama from Ramayana, he is one of the characters who is worshipped today with temples across this landmass of Bharat. Because he's known to be the great bringer of light. He's known to be the great solace provider. That is why Valmiki opens up the chapter of, or the character of, or the introduction of the character of Hanuman takes place in Valmiki Ramayana with these notes. The first words that Hanuman spoke is Sambhramas Tyajyatamesha Sarvair Valikrate Mahan Malayoyan Girivaro Bhayan Nehasti Valinaha. Sugriva has fled away from his state of fear of Vali. There happened battle. Ultimately he had to find shelter in some giri. And there, this Malaya, in Malaya Girivara, is in this region, there is no fear of Vali. He opens up his conversation with this word, Sambhramas Tyajyatam. Sambhrama word, though it is used in today's vernaculars of India, for example, in Kannada, Sambhrama means pomp and pleasure or one sort of excitement. But in Sanskrita, it is not so. Sambhrama is sort of confused state. So such confused state, Tyajyatam, let it go away. You should abandon this confused state of mind. And here Vali cannot come. So very opening up word of Hanuman conveys very effectively that he wards off all the fears. Even today, to get rid of fear, people chant various stotras associated with Hanuman. Now, here comes the idea of Aharya, which Bharata and later scholars of Natya Shastra emphasized on. Aharya means the peripheral or the foreground of one's conversation or expression. Here, Hanuman has to meet Rama and Lakshmana. He does not know who these two are. And the entire Kapis for supporting Sugriva are confused. They are thinking these two are the spies of Vali or the allies of Vali, and they are here to attack on them. Now the mission is on the shoulder of Hanuman, and now he has to speak to these people. He cannot simply go and attack on them. That is not the way of dealing with strangers. But he has to speak to them. Before speaking, to make his communication effective and fruit-yielding, he changes his appearance, Aharya. Vesha. Kapirupam Parityajya. He thinks these two human beings may not trust me, or they may not receive me in a positive manner if I appear in front of them in my original Kapirupa. So Hanuman Marutatmajaha Bhikshurupam Tato Bheje. He appeared in front of them in a form of a sannyasi or sadhu or a bhikshu. See, this is, even today, there is an understanding in Indian psyche without being taught commoners in India, they think people who move in sadhu vesha, the attire of a monk, maybe saffron robes or a stick in their hand, a staff in their hand, they are trustworthy. At least not for any negotiation or not for any transaction, but at least you can trust them that they are not going to harm you. There is a saying in Sanskrit, Kashaya dandamatrena yatif pujyo nasamshayah. Just by the Kashaya Vastra and a staff in his hand, the Yati is adorable or worshipable. So, one of the most trustworthy forms or aharya for any communication in India is Bhikshurupa. Hanuman was very much aware of this thing, and he appears in front of Rama Lakshmana in the form of Yati or Bhikshu, and then speaks. Tatascha Hanuman vacha shlakshnaya sumanojnaya. Again, this is also one sort of aharya. While speaking to others, the tone should be very mild or it should be very appreciable. Shlakshnaya, sumanojnaya, and vinitavat upagamya. Again, an aharya or angika must be. Vinitavat upagamya. He approached them with very humble gesture. Raghavo pranipatyacha. Touched their feet or he prostrated in front of them. Ababhashe chitau virau yathavat prashashamsacha. See, to open up a conversation or looking for any fruitful conversation, the strangers must be appreciated for whatever is visible at that point of time. And that is what Hanuman did. Sampujya vidhivat virau Hanuman vanarottamaha vacha kamato vakyam radu satya parakramau. How he says, Rajarshi Devat Pratimau, Tapasau, Samshitau Vratau. He's not exaggerating, he's not bringing in any hyperbolism. He's telling what is appearing over there, but with good words. He says, Tapasau, Samshitau Vratau. It seems that you are great tapasvis. Deva Pratimau. And then Samshitau Vratau. It seems that you are having great control over your senses. And then he asks this question, having praised them before opening up conversation, he then asks question, Desham katham imam prapto bhavantau varavarninau. He opens up the conversation, how did you come here? And Valmiki, again, if at all we look at Ramayana only as a piece of literature, nothing else, if at all, for academic purpose, then it is not Rama, it is not Lakshmana, or it is not Hanuman who is the Vakyajna or great knower of good conversation, or neither it is Vishwamitra, but it is Valmiki, because he conceptualized these kind of characters who are effective in their communication. Whenever Valmiki speaks of Hanuman, he does not forget to use terms like Vakyajnaha, Vakya Kushalaha. Here in the further shloka, Eva Muktva tu Hanuman Punarvacha Kinchana. Vakyajnaha, one who knows Vakya. Vakya Kushalaha, one who knows how to use the Vakya. Throughout this Kishkindha, later half of Kishkindha Kanda and Sundara Kanda, whenever there is reference to Hanuman, Valmiki often brings in Vakya Kovidaha, Vakyajnaha, Vakya Kushalaha as an adjective to Hanuman. And Rama also recognizes this. At the last portion of Kishkindha Kanda, Rama, having listened to the words of Hanuman at the length, turns towards Lakshmana and says, Nandrigveda Vinitasya, Nejurveda Dharinaha, Nasama Veda Vidushaha, Shakyameva Vibhashitum. Hanuman must have studied, Hanuman must have received the Veda Vidya. Because unless someone studies Veda Vidya or goes through the process of Veda learning, he cannot or she cannot speak this eloquently. Also he says, Nunam Vyakaranam Kritsnamanena Bahudha Shrutam, Bahu Vyaharatanena Nakinchit Apabhashitam. One of the traits of good communication is one is fluency, second one is grammatical correctness. That is what Rama is hinting at. Bahu vyaharatanena, though this Hanuman spoke at length, na kinchidapa bhashitam, still he did not make any mistake, syntactic, phonetic, whatever kind of domains are pertaining to the world of linguistics, he did not make any such mistake. And then comes again Angika. He also says to Lakshmana, see how keen observer this Rama is. He says, Namukhe netrayoschapi lalate cha bhruvostata anyeshvapi cha sarveshu doshas samviditah kvachit. I was looking at the face of this bhikshu who is speaking to us so long. In his eyes, in his lalata, on his forehead, or in his eyebrow, no change happened, or it did not convey any way that this person is hiding something. He is trustworthy. He is reliable. So, in a communication, when a communication takes place, there are multiple things. One is verbal communication, and as a peripheral of verbal communication, there comes Aharya and Angika. And throughout Valmiki Ramayana, we notice this. Further, in Sundarakanda, of course, Sundarakanda is completely of this Vakyajna and Vakyakuvida, Vakyakushala, Vakyavidam Shresthaha. Valmiki brings in these adjectives to Hanuman. Vakyavidam Shresthaha. Hanuman is the best among the people who know how to use Vakya. Evam gunagunairukta yasya karya sadhakaha tasya siddhanti sarvertha duta vakya prachoditaha. These are the appreciations of Rama. Rama is also a great communicator. He does not forget to appreciate his followers. When a mission is given, a task is given, the leader should take this step. A task, when it is completed or attempted, then it should be appreciated. Then he asks, so trustworthy Hanuman is for Rama. Hanuman has been sent to Lanka in order to speak to Sita, give her assurance, and come back. But then the other things which are not expressively communicated to Hanuman are also executed by Hanuman. And Rama is very much sure about it. Though he did not say that you have to take an account of the weaponry, account of fortification, account of security system in Lanka, still he thinks, though it is not commanded to Hanuman, still he believes that Hanuman must have taken an account of it. So he asks, Kati Durgani Durgaya Lankaya Tad Bravihime. Jnatum ichchami tat sarvam darshanadiva vanara. I want to know from you that their capability, their military ability, though this task was not part of Hanuman's mission. Evam bahuvidham chintam chintayitva mahakavihi samshraye madhuram vakyam samshrave madhuram vakyam vaidehya vyajahar. Again, Angika or Aharya, when Hanuman is about to speak to Sita, Sita is undergoing so much of terror in the custody of Ravana in Lanka. Every other day, Ravana and his supporters are playing Maya around us. One day they came up with the hanging head of Rama, saying that Rama has been slain. But only there were some supporters of Sita who taught her that it is not true, it is only the illusion or Maya. So in such condition, if Hanuman directly appears in front of her, such a terrible condition she is into, she is already terrified. In front of her, if directly Mahakapi appears, then again she will think that it is another Maya being played around us, around her by Rakshasas. So in order to evade, in order to avoid this kind of scenario, Hanuman thinks a lot. And then sitting on a branch of a tree, he starts singing the story of Ramayana up till that point. So by the time he reached in Sundarakanda, by the time he reached Ashokavana, he had already known the story of Ramayana, and he had planned how to communicate this to Sita in order to generate trust in her. So these are the traits of a good communicator. In Ramayana, myriad examples can be brought in. In Mahabharata, of course, Krishna is one of the best communicators. Kurukshetra War, before Kurukshetra War, he had taken the mission of going to the courts in order to bring or ensure peace. People nowadays, people sometimes say that Krishna was the warmonger, because when Arjuna was ready to quit everything, when Arjuna was ready to be pleased with whatever his destiny decides, then Sri Krishna told him to fight. So Krishna is a warmonger. This kind of argument should be countered on the basis of Krishna's efforts to bring in peace. And every time he appeared, a great diplomat. And it is not, just again, it is not hyperbolism, or it is not just for the sake of Arthavada. He did not do Arthavada. He was true, or he was to the core. Sri Krishna was trying to establish peace. When he speaks to Dhritarashtra, when he speaks to Duryodhana, every time he tried his level best to establish peace as a messenger or as an ambassador or a paragon. Vidura is also one of the great communicators. In Mahabharata, there are any character you take of prominence like Vidura or like Sanjaya. Sanjaya is one such great communicator that to a blind person, he created the world of war. I mean, his verbal narration of what is going on in Dharmakshetra, Kurukshetra was enough, more than sufficient for Dhritarashtra to visualize, though he is blind by birth. It was enough for him to visualize what is happening. So one live commentator can create a world of visuals just by the words. That means that communicator must be a very, very effective communicator. And then we have Bhishmacharya in the later half of Mahabharata, when he's lying down on Sharashaya. Every day these Pandavas would go and speak to him, ask many questions regarding statecraft. Bhishma would narrate some story or the other. Similarly, in the Vanavasa of Pandavas for 13 years, they were constantly pacified or constantly soothed by the stories by Markandeya Maharshi or some other sages who narrated stories in an effective manner so that the grief of Pandavas is subsided. So such effective communicators they were, or storytellers they were. If you take Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, again, even today, it communicates idea to the generations of this landmass called Bharat. It has contextual relevance, clarity and simplicity. Krishna doesn't make it too much complicated. Person who knows basic things would understand what Sri Krishna is speaking of. And then emotional intelligence and empathy. For a person who is asking, who is really in trouble, this communicator Sri Krishna understands that, and the kind of empathy should be shown, Sri Krishna shows that. And then interaction, it is not one side easy chair philosophy that Sri Krishna gave to Arjuna. It was an interaction, it was dialogue based. And then it was progressive. Sri Krishna puts up all the paths that are possible to Arjuna. In first 3 or 4 chapters, everything, whatever he had to communicate, he had communicated already in principle. But then it was not clear for that disciple Arjuna, and then Sri Krishna elaborates it. Not only that, see, human beings are, we have certain limitations. Our brains have got some limitations. We believe things based on its aharya. The aharya should be there. The periphery of the communication should be there in very conducive format. Whatever Sri Krishna tells, ultimately what made influence is Sri Krishna's Vishwarupa Darshana to this human mind called Arjuna. Until then, he had many doubts. He would ask, Sri Krishna, you say that also, this also, then what should I believe? You show Bhakti Marga, you show Karma Marga, you show this thing. Which should I believe? Sri Krishna, without any trace of pain in his face, would do whatever is required to communicate the idea effectively to Arjuna. He again ultimately shows Vishwarupa as well. That is the requirement of human mind. And it is progressive. He places all the possible paths and then tells, whatever suits well to you, whatever you think is possible for you, you pick up that. He ultimately did not say you have to fight, but in my view, you should fight. But ultimately, decision is yours. It is a motivational communication, and it is ethical purpose, ethical purpose-driven communication. It is. So this much for this session. Perhaps it is already 7:20. I would conclude my presentation here and would like to take questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, sir, for taking through the journey of how communications happened over from the past. And it is not only about words, what has been spoken, but also the way it has been spoken.
Yes.
And the dialogue that's been taken forward. And you touched up, it was like a journey what we went through your presentations. Thank you so much, sir. So can we take a few questions now, sir?
Sure.
Yeah. The first question is actually a statement followed by a question. The purpose of communication in ancient India is to develop intuition of person by way of refining the tendencies at different layers of human personality, leading to clarity of inner being. Is Guru transforming the inner being of the student by communication is a question.
Is Guru, come again?
Is Guru transforming the inner being of student by communication?
Many a times it is true. And there are sayings, Chitram Batataror Mule Vadhashishya Guru Yuva, Gurostu Mamunam Vyakhyanam Shishyastu Chinna Samshayaha. Communication is at the higher level, not necessarily through words or dhvani. It is also through mauna. In the context of Buddha also we see that. For many questions, Buddha did not reply. He simply kept quiet. But then Shishyas got the answer. Similarly, in our times, if in closer time to our times, that is 19th century, Ramana Maharshigal, he also emphasized on the idea of mauna communication. So communication happened at that level between such Guru and such Shishya, even without Shabda. Yes, Gurus tried to transform the inner personality of Shishyas. Many examples are there.
The next question is, Swaram Udattam Anudattam as applicable to Vedic chanting. Can you help us with some examples of wrong or opposite meaning if pronounced wrongly?
See, Swarapatha was, of course, even today it is prominent in Vedic chanting. Traiswarya is applicable today only to Vedic chanting, and that precision is not seen in other textual content which is available to us. But then there are certain references. For example, Panini. Panini's Ashtadhyayi, once upon a time, it was set to Traiswarya. Udatta, Anudatta, Swarita were employed by Panini to denote certain things. Based on that only, all the Vyakhyanas later, especially the Prakriya Mukha Vyakhyana in Paninian tradition, takes help of this kind of Traiswarya. But in the Pathakrama, in today's tradition, Guru Shishya Parampara, Traiswarya or the application of Udatta Anudatta Swarita for the Paninian Sutras is missing. It is not seen. How the meaning changes. There are certain examples. If you open up the first chapter of Mahabhashya, as I mentioned, Indra Shatror Vardhasva. I'm not sure how to reproduce it, but in that word, meaning changes means, see, for Indra Shatru, this word Indra Shatru can have multiple ways of splitting. That means it is a compound word, and compound can be either Shashti Tatpurusha or Bahurihi. For example, one Shabda, very famous Shabda, Lokanatha. Lokanatha is a Shabda. In a shloka, when a Lokanatha Shabda is used, whether to understand it as a Shashti Tatpurusha or Bahurihi. If it is Shashti Tatpurusha, it gives one meaning. If it is Bahurihi, it gives completely a different meaning. I'll bring that shloka for you. Ahancha Tvancha Rajendra Lokanatha Ubhavapi. Bahurihi Rahantatra Shashti Tatpurusho Bhavan. There was a beggar who walked into the court of a great king saying that Ahancha Tvancha Rajendra Lokanatha Ubhavapi. O king, both you and I are Lokanathas. I mean, he's equating himself with the king. King got really angry. King stood up. He took up his sword in order to chop the head off of that beggar. Then the second line comes, or the third and fourth pada of the shloka comes from the beggar's end. Bahurihi raham tatra shashti tatpurusho bhavan. O king, yes, you and I both are Lokanatha, but Lokanatha word should be split according to Bahurihi samasa in my case, but in your case, it is Shashti Tatpurusha. In Bahurihi, Lokaha eva nathaha yasya saha, to whom the entire world only is the caretaker, that is beggar. Beggar does not have any means of his own to take care of his life. But then, in the case of the king, Lokanatha is Shashti Tatpurusha Samasa. Actually, Shashti Tatpurusha Samasa is a endocentric compound. I mean, meaning comes from the existing words, and Bahurihi Samasa is an exocentric compound. The meaning comes from the external word. So when you make Shashti Tatpurusha, Lokanatha stands for Lokasya Natha, one who is the Lord of the world or Lord of people. Now the single word Lokanatha is used, but in one context it is split according to Bahurihi Samasa, and one context it is split according to Tatpurusha Samasa. How do I know where to split as Tatpurusha or where to split as Bahurihi? For this, there is certain tonal variation. That is what we call as Traisvarya or Udatta Andatta Svarita. Veda employs it. In the case of Indra Shatrur Vardhasva, same thing has happened. Yeah.
So the next question is, does fluency a major trait of communication?
To a great extent it is, and especially what we notice through the texts of Ramayana and Mahabharata, all those great communicators were very, very eloquent. They were very fluent in putting the words, especially ours is oral tradition. And when it comes to, oral presentation, fluency is one of the traits.
Yes. The next question is, actions speak louder than words. How can we link this in traditional context?
Actually, come again.
Action speaks louder than words. How can we link with traditional context?
We are oral tradition, and then actions are never neglected. Through the oral tradition, what is emphasized is again action. If you look into the words of Krishna, he multiple times he gives extra stress on the idea of karma. So actions speak louder. Of course, there are multiple ways of communication. In non-verbal communication, actions are very effective, especially when it comes to relationship and all that. If the question is set to any particular context, I would request the person to clear the context, in what context this question is arising.
Okay, so the next question is, how and at what age can we introduce Vedas and Shlokas to children? Can you suggest any learning centers in Bangalore? Is a question what they've asked you, sir.
Nowadays, there are many online platforms to learn Shlokas for sure. To name some, there is Vibhu Academy. Many of the participants here must have taken certain courses that they offer very often. They are one of the reliable sources of shloka chanting. And then there is Vyoma Linguistic Schools, again based in Bengaluru. They have produced a lot of materials, self-learning materials, especially this shloka chanting. Regarding Veda, tradition says it is after Upanayana, and Upanayana should take place for different varnas at different age. The so-called first varna, it is Garbhashtama. And with that initiation, Veda chanting starts. There are super enthusiastic parents nowadays that they teach Veda at a very early age, which is actually not permitted by the tradition. To say tradition, what the tradition is, tradition says only after Upanayana, one should be initiated through Vedic chanting. For Shloka, there is no such limitation. And it is not just reading. There is a particular way of reading Shlokas in very Samhita Krama. That can be learned through these two modes, which I mentioned earlier. One is Vibhu Academy courses or Vyoma Linguistic Labs. They also offer online courses, and they have materials. They have produced materials.
Oh, yes, sir. There's one more question. Bhagavad Gita gives an example of purposeful communication, giving the listener the option to follow or not verse or not. Verse number 63, chapter 18. Yada husva tada kuru. This is what is being
Yathechasi tatha kuru, it must be.
okay. Yeah.
But the communicator is so effective that he knows this Arjuna will not again go back to his Klaibya. At the very first chapter, he was bit harsh. I mean, in the second chapter. First chapter is all about the crying or the melancholic mood of Arjuna. He expressed his mind and his bodily changes, that ve batuscha sharire me roma harshascha jayate and all he says, and it was visible to Krishna. The second chapter onwards, Sri Krishna takes up and he says, see, you are prajnavadascha bhashase, he says. It is a very harsh word. Actually, prajnavada, it's a very harsh word in the context of Bhagavad Gita if you look into. So at the outset, Krishna shows his anger as a guru. It is not explicit anger, but there was some tone of bitter, slightly bitter tone. Later, he goes on narrating various ways, and he was so confident that Arjuna will not go back to square one, wherein he was trembling, he was shivering, and he was not at all in a mind, he was not at all in a mood to fight. So Sri Krishna knew that he will fight perhaps. So he says, Yathechasi tatha kuru. It is not that it is fine if you go back now to Vanavasa again. No, it is not that.
Yes. One of the participants is asked for suggesting a reliable course for learning Sanskrit.
My alma mater, that is Central Sanskrit University, they have launched very good courses online. If you search for Central Sanskrit University, CSU, Delhi, earlier which was named as Rashtriya Samskrita Sansthan. Recently, they have launched somewhere around 100 plus courses for people who are aspiring for various levels of Sanskrit studies, starting from the introductory level of language to the textual understanding of various domains. So one can go for that. That is one option. Second one, Bengaluru is the hub of Sanskrit learning, I would say, not only for Karnataka, but for Bharat. We have Aksharam, located in Girinagara. That is the base of Samskrita Bharati. They regularly offer online mode courses as well as this Patrachara courses, distance mode courses. They have published beautiful books. Again, from Rashtriya Samskrita Sanstana, in 2010 or so, they have published Diksha courses. Those Diksha courses in various places of Bharat, Diksha courses are organized by Central Sanskrit University. One can enroll for that course if it is nearby, it is located. Otherwise, they can take online courses. These are the two major streams of Sanskrit courses. And as I mentioned earlier, there is Vyoma Linguistic Labs. They are also offering this kind of Sanskrit learning courses.
Yes, sir. Sir, it was a wonderful session and the way the questions were taken forward. Thank you so much for taking your time off and taking a session on this platform. Thank you very much, sir. On behalf of CES and the collaborating organization Sikvai Foundation of Higher Education, Hyderabad, and Ramaya Institute of Management, Bangalore, we thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to thank all the participants for joining the session today. Thank you very much. Shubh Ratri. We'll meet session tomorrow.